We'll go ahead and start. So if you want to just take a minute and reconnect with your motivation, we'll use the Shakyamuni Buddha mantra. Taya taya om mune mune maha mune soha. Taya taya om mune mune maha mune soha. Taya taya om mune mune maha mune soha. Before the break, we were talking about the teacher, and the idea is that there is the substantial cause for becoming a Buddha, and there is the coactive condition. So the substantial cause for becoming a Buddha is your own Buddha nature. And your own Buddha nature has two aspects: that which is naturally present, the fact that your mind is empty of inherent existence, and the fact that that mind can be developed, which is the other aspect of Buddha nature. So it needs to be developed through purification of negative habits and negative karmic seeds. It needs to be developed by means of the method side of the path, compassion, loving kindness, etc. So those two aspects of your Buddha nature is the substantial cause, the main thing that is going to lead you to Buddhahood. But then it needs conditions to water and nurture that. And from a Buddhist perspective, the main condition for activating your Buddha nature is the relationship with the teacher and the inspiration from the teacher. So the biggest condition for awakening that Buddha nature is the teacher. So that's why we're talking about the teacher, is that it's this powerful condition. And, you know, from a secular perspective, you can see many parallels, I think, with mentorship, with, you know, doctors and therapists, et cetera, that the person themselves has the ability for health, whatever form of health, physical health, mental health. But in order for that health to be fully realized and activated, certain things need to be learned, certain things need to be taught. And so we were looking at the qualities of a teacher and kind of what makes them a suitable vessel to be this powerful condition. And what do you remember from before the break in terms of what you think is the most important? You know, there was a list of lots of qualities that a teacher needs to be a teacher, but just from your own kind of opinion or what you remember, what do you think is the most important thing when seeking a teacher that you rely upon in this deep spiritual way?
Maybe that he has clear mind.
Clear mind. What do you mean by a clear mind?
That's what I read, like in these pages. Clear mind, like thinking right, understanding the right way, maybe able to see many ways of one thing, look at it from different perspective. Also compassion, for my sake.
Yep.
Like clear mind and compassion is to...
Yeah, that makes sense. Clear-minded, or like open-minded, we would say in English, meaning able to see lots of spectrum of things, a lot of nuance and compassion. Yeah, absolutely. And those would fit into the traditional categories of some of the most important ones for sure. What else? There's another one that is very important, I think, that we all are on board with. And so I'll just wait until I hear it. What do you think is one of the most important traits? Yeah. Say again?
The ethics.
Ethics,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Phew. Someone said ethics, excellent. Yep. Compassion and ethics and a clear mind, yeah, that covers the bases for sure. Would you add anything to that? Qualities that you think are necessary for a fully qualified, proper teacher as opposed to just someone who's instructing or facilitating?
Maybe that he will have also an inner peace.
Yeah, an inner peace, and he has done their own practice. Yeah, they've done their own practice. They're not just using books or using charisma, that they've actually gone through paths themselves. Yeah, like that. Yeah, inner peace. What is the recipe for inner peace? Right? There is a recipe for inner peace, but if you're trying to find it out from someone who themselves doesn't have it, then it's a little bit difficult. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
In the text you gave to read, they spoke about that even the teacher, they call it the Buddha, can have faults and of the relative nature. We should react to our faults. Something that doesn't have inborn nature, but it's relative. It's kind of confusing if the teacher is it he have faults because he's a human after all, or this is what he shows us only in the relative medium, but it's not his true nature or something.
Yeah, this is the huge question for practitioners. What are you exactly relating to? What is it you're exactly relating to? Because you know the qualities you're looking for and the qualities you seem to see in someone, but what is the actual state of affairs separate from your own projections? You know, it's so difficult to know what is the relative truth of a situation and what's your extra layer on top of the relative truth of the situation. Never mind even the ultimate truth. Do we even see the relative truth accurately? And so many of the faults that we see in a teacher are our own projections or our own karmic obscurations or the tendencies of our own mind. You know, if you're a particularly, I don't know, distracted person and you feel very ashamed of your distracted nature, then you might project that on the teacher. And if they seem to lose their thread for a minute, you think, oh, they're not a proper teacher. Look at how distracted they get. You know, and you're projecting your own faults on them because the content is triggering. Or they might also be distracted and they're only human. You know, how can you know? Is it just your projection or is it the truth of the thing? And ultimately, we can't know at our level. We can't know. And so what we do is we do our checking with the clearest mind we can, given our level. You know, you sort of do your assessment of, given what I know of the world so far, given the best way my mind functions in assessing someone else, you know, when I'm less afflicted, when I'm less attached, when I'm less irritable, when I'm calm, the way that I assess people, I can rely on that to a certain degree to tell me this person is reliable or not. But at a certain point, you won't know because you can't see someone else's mind. And, you know, it becomes quite frustrating because you're assessing qualities that you can't be sure that you're naming properly. And yet at a certain point, you just have to trust yourself, don't you? You have to trust that you've seen it clearly enough to make a commitment. It's a bit like what I assume it would be like if you're checking whether or not to get married to someone, right? You have an assumption about the qualities you see, you have an assumption about the characteristics you value, but you're not 100% sure that that's what is real or consistent or, you know, gonna be there forever. You don't really know. So there's your intellectual assessment, there's your kind of heart connection, and then there's faith. right? There's a really solid logical process you go through. There's a heart connection you check in with, and then you kind of make a leap to say, there is a power in a promise. There is strength in commitment. And so I'm going to make this connection not knowing every single aspect or every single detail of how it will play out. I'm going to make this commitment anyway. And that's, you know, that's a tricky spot, because how far do you let it go if it starts to go wrong? Yeah. So it's, this assessment period is really emphasized, even though in actual Buddhist Dharma centers, it's kind of de-emphasized. In all of the texts, it's incredibly emphasized. Check your teachers over many years, check them from many angles. Check yourself as a student. Are you even ready for a proper teacher, or as a facilitator or an instructor gonna move you along well enough? You know, are you even ready for this kind of commitment? You know, and that this process really requires very deep thought. And yet when you go to a Dharma center or a Buddhist temple, often you rely on the, I don't know, peer pressure or the community hype about some teacher. You know, you hear this name or that name, you follow their reputation, and then you think, well, that must mean there is reliability. So then Mika's asking, why 12 years of checking? I don't know why they picked 12 exactly. There must be some reason, because Buddhists always have reasons for their lists. I'm not sure why 12 years exactly, but it's saying a large chunk of time, isn't it? That's not a short amount of time. And I would say that, yeah, death is coming. It's the degenerate age. 12 years might be a bit long for us at this stage, but please, from my heart, wait more than 12 hours. Please wait more than 12 hours, which seems ridiculous, doesn't it? And yet I've known so many people who go to one class with a teacher and decide, yep, they're for me. And they basically are giving their whole life to them and lifetimes to them. It's a bigger commitment than marriage, and they make it in a much shorter length of time. It's fascinating. So we have to make sure our logic is well engaged with this process, together with, is there a heart connection or not? Because of course there are many qualified teachers who you don't have a strong karmic connection with, you know, so they might be perfect in terms of being a teacher, but the connection with you isn't there. So you don't want to force it, you know, just like there's probably, you know, lots and lots of people out there who have the suitable criteria to be married to you, but you're not going to marry each one of them. You have to wait for the heart connection as well, isn't it? So, you know, just because they tick all the boxes, you know, whatever emotionally stable, friendly, respectful, whatever your marriage tick box was, I don't know. They might meet all that criteria, but that's not enough for you to give your whole life to them, is it? There has to be that heart connection as well. So the same is true for the guru. Questions about that?
I thought in the same place, the same sentence, that seeing the flaws that appear in our external goals are dependently arising, and enable us to see that the flaws that appear in our internal goals, our clear light minds, are also dependently arising. Maybe this view is like having compassion for the guru, and seeing the main qualities, and if sometimes something isn't so, we are not sure about some quality, or we see a flaw, but we see the main thing, and maybe this is the most important, and maybe it helps us to be compassionate to ourselves if we have compassion towards his flaws. I didn't know it's the right understanding, but this is what I thought.
Well, this is certainly solid secular wisdom. This is solid secular wisdom. And I would say, you know, for people that are not going to become card-carrying Buddhists, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. You know, you want to have a view that's looking for the main qualities so that you can learn from those qualities and develop from those qualities. And then when you see fault, to just have compassion for them as being an ordinary person with ordinary troubles, and it's not the main thing you're looking at. So we have compassion for it, and then we shift our focus to the qualities. That's definitely secular wisdom that is absolutely appropriate. From a Buddhist perspective, there's a bit more of a spectrum of eventually not seeing fault. Yeah, so you train in not seeing fault, which can get very dangerous and can be a little bit like some cognitive dissonance can happen, which is why there's so much emphasis on the checking process. So, for example, they give an example in the text of there are two students going up a mountain to see their guru, right? And they're going up this mountain and they're going up this mountain, and they get to the top of the mountain and there's their teacher. And the two students are both really hot and tired, and, you know, it was a big journey. And the teacher comes and he gives them tea that's cold. One student thinks, how kind the teacher is. He gave us cold tea, knowing that we've come all this way and that we're hot and sweaty. How kind the teacher is to give us cold tea. The other student thinks, how rude the teacher is. He can't even give us hot tea. We came all this way. We made this huge journey and they can't even make the effort to give us hot tea, right? And so we really don't know why the teacher gave cold tea. We don't know. But as the student, we're trying to train in assuming they're doing everything for our benefit, because our practice stands to benefit from that view. But you could see how very dangerous that could get if you chose the wrong person to put that mental dance with. You know what I mean? Like, it could get quite dangerous and it could get quite crazy making, hence the need for so much checking. So yeah, does that, I don't know if that clarifies or doesn't clarify, but certainly the view that you're describing is excellent and we should have, especially at our level. But once you make a commitment to a teacher, a mutual commitment after mutual checking, and you say, will you be my teacher? And they say, yes, you will be my student. And there's that checking that's happened and that agreement that's happened. In that case, you have to then start training in not seeing fault, rather than bringing compassion to the faults that you see. Does that make sense, the distinction? So yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky. And yet, you know, practice really goes from a hobby to a way of life much more quickly when you have this direct relationship. And when you train in seeing everything as a teaching from the Guru Buddha, you know, and you start to mix the term Buddha and Guru together, it becomes the Guru Buddha, the Guru Buddha, the Guru Buddha. And even our most common food offering prayer goes, you know, the Guru is Dharma, or the Guru is Buddha, the Guru is Dharma, the Guru is Sangha also. The Guru is the creator of all happiness. To all Gurus I make offerings. That's our common food offering prayer that we do before meals, which sounds nuts unless you understand what it means, which is basically, from teachings come development of positive qualities, positive karma, which ripen as the resources you need for the path and the resources you need for daily life happiness, such as food, etc. Without the Guru, there is no Buddha for us. There's just the idea. Without the Guru, there is no Dharma for us. There's just books that we half understand. Without the Guru, there is no Sangha community that develops and grows. So this is why it's discussed in this way, and why it's a potentially quite dangerous topic, because people either are very resistant to giving up a certain level of their own autonomy, a certain level of their own self-direction, or the other hand, they're too easily giving up their authority, independence, autonomy. It's very easy to go the wrong way with this. But ideally, the inner Guru and the outer Guru are in perfect collaboration and resonance, and you train in seeing everything as a teaching from the Guru, even when there's not the physical human person present for you. So it's an interesting training. And it's similar to the very simple like Zen training of just seeing everything as your teacher, seeing everything as a teaching. It's similar in Zen, right? See everything as a teacher, see everything as a teaching, but it's less literal than in the Tibetan system where you're trying to literally see everything as coming from the Guru Buddha specifically for you, specifically to train your mind out of the current delusions it's in. Yeah, there's a directness to the view that's slightly different than in other traditions, which means the power of it is really important and really significant, but also the danger is more as well. Do you see the benefit of this view, or is the benefit still kind of obscure?
When everything teaches you something and like the world is your teacher, then learning is very, very rich. You have every opportunity to learn every minute. Many, many things happen, and if they have a meaning of teaching, then it's very rich.
It is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the aim. It makes for a very rich life. And it's different than thinking everything is God's plan, right? So there might be like an immediate kind of parallel you make and you think, oh, it's like saying everything's God's plan. If everything is orchestrated by the guru to teach me something, how is that different than maybe a Christian view or a Jewish view or something like this about thinking about God's plan? And from a Buddhist perspective, it's not that the Buddha is in control of every aspect of your life, either from the perspective of the advice you get or the circumstances around you. It's more like you try to feel their presence within everything disruptive or destructive or joyful or inspiring, anything in your life. You try to feel the guru-ness in the center of it and ask, what is the way I can take that on the path? So rather than feeling like it's an orchestrated teaching for you, you try to feel something in the middle where it's like, there is the karma ripening for me right now from the past. There's the conditions around me right now in the present. And the Guru Buddha is present in everything. And so how would they be using this present moment set of circumstances to help me wake up? So, you know, it's a delicate thing to sit with. It's not like they're a puppeteer, or it's not like they're the creator God with a plan. It's not like that at all. And yet there still is this connection of they are trying to bring influence. They are trying to bring teaching to me in every moment. For me to feel it, I have to be receptive and open. So how do I create from my side that type of receptivity that is always listening for the Guru Buddha? Which is maybe like listening for, I don't know, the idealized self-object and everything. I don't know. You guys are the experts of that. But it's an interesting way to live. Yeah. So just trying here, there's a slight nuance between seeing everything as a teaching, you know, kind of divorced from whether it's intended to be a teaching for you or not, in the kind of Zen way, right? Which is very useful and very profound, but it's less feeling of a direct, someone is telling me something. It's more like you're choosing to see everything as a teaching. You're choosing to see the wisdom in everyone and choosing to see it as a teacher, rather than there's some extra mind involved trying to use the now to get me to wake up. So there's a slight distinction there, which is worth sitting with. And whether it's your cup of tea or not is completely personal choice. Lots of Buddhists practice very well without this kind of like epic capital T teacher, big guru thing. Lots of good Buddhists, lots of secular Buddhists, lots of, you know, people who are Jewish and Buddhist or Christian and Buddhist and, you know, hybrids, you know, lots of people practice very well, very ethical, transformative lives without this epic relationship. Important to know what it is and what the benefit of it is so that you can make kind of an informed choice, or you can just kind of sit with it as a premise and ask, is there a useful way to bring that into my work or life, even if it's not in this fully qualified Tibetan Buddhist version. It's just interesting to sit with, because again, the guru from our perspective is what activates or is the big condition to wake up your Buddha potential and nurture its growth into full Buddhahood. Okay, so we'll go down halfway down page 51. On page 51, it says, Bodhiwa said. So that's where we are if you want to jump down in the text. And it says, these 5 qualities, loving concern, knowledge of reality, and the 3 trainings are foremost. The 3 trainings being ethics, concentration, and wisdom. So of all the qualities of the guru that were talked about before, loving concern, knowledge of reality, and the 3 trainings are foremost. Bodhiwa's master, Shangsun, is not very learned with regard to all the scriptures and cannot withstand dispiriting circumstances. Therefore, he does not even thank those who help him. However, since he has these 5 qualities, he is helpful to whomever is in his presence. Yönten does not have any skill in speech at all. Even when giving a single dedication of an offering, he can only think, none of these people here understands what I'm saying. But as he has the 5 qualities, he is helpful to whoever enters his presence. It's kind of interesting. So this being the case, those who achieve their own livelihood by praising or explaining the good qualities of the trainings, while not striving diligently to practice them, are not suitable to be teachers. That sort of meaningless praise is only words. It is similar to when someone who diligently seeks sandalwood asks one who makes a living by explaining the good qualities of sandalwood, "Do you have any sandalwood?" And that person replies, "No." Right? So just giving an example about why it's not useful to pick someone who doesn't practice, right? All right, so then over the page 52, you're going to jump down to the question and reply section. You can read the other bit if you're curious, but it's basically variations on the same ideas. So jump down to question towards the bottom of page 52. Because this is a degenerate time, it is difficult to find a teacher who has these good qualities in their entirety. Therefore, what should we do if we do not find such a teacher? So there's this concept in Buddhism of the degenerate time or the degenerate age, which is the time since a Buddha in his full aspect, who is kind of outing himself as a Buddha, has lived and taught. So Shakyamuni Buddha was the last Buddha who was on this earth in a kind of fully manifest form that everyone could see and recognize, and who said, "I am enlightened," and the disciples had the karma to see his enlightened abilities and qualities. After he showed the aspect of passing away, from that time onward is called the degenerate time. So there'll be a degenerate time for quite a long time, and then the karma of sentient beings will be nourished to the extent where another Buddha can manifest in their fully realized form. And the Buddha that is to come is Buddha Maitreya, the Buddha of loving kindness. So he's next up on the list. And there's said to be, 1,000 Buddhas of this fortunate eon. So an eon is this huge, huge length of time. And within that time, there'll be 1,000 Buddhas that manifest in a way that we can see and access. That said, there are Buddhas everywhere getting enlightened all the time. People are getting enlightened all the time, all over the universe. But for us to have the karma to see and access them in their fully realized form is relatively rare. So we're kind of riding the wave of Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings right now, but we're in the time of degeneration. So eventually the teachings will become less and less complete, more and more corrupt, more influences from negative teachers until they kind of completely degenerate. And then a new Buddha will come and, or a new to us Buddha will come and explain the teachings freshly and completely in their entirety and kind of revive everything back to life. So from a Buddhist perspective, there's this kind of like pendulum swing, there's a Buddha, there's degeneration, and then another Buddha, and then degeneration, and then another Buddha. And eventually all of us will become enlightened, but we go through dark ages, and that's something that's kind of known and predicted. So right now we're in a degenerate time. It's hard to find a teacher with complete qualities. What do we do? The reply is, from the Tantra requested by Zabahu, just as a chariot with one wheel will not go down the path even though it has a horse, So too, without assistance for meditation, people will not gain attainments. These assistants should have intelligence, good appearance, great purity, be of reputable lineage, and incline towards the teachings. They should have great confidence, perseverance, and have disciplined the senses. They should speak pleasantly, be generous and compassionate, forbear hunger, thirst, and the afflictions, and not worship other deities and Brahmins. They should be focused, adept, grateful, and have faith in the three jewels. Since those who have all such good qualities are very rare in this age of strife, mantra practitioners should rely on an assistant who has 1/2, 1/4, or an 1/8 of these qualities. So even if you find someone with an 1/8 of these qualities superior to your own, compassion, ethics is kind of good enough for the degenerate age. Thus, it says that assistants should have these defining characteristics in their entirety, or at least 1/8 of these. It is explained in Dawa's arrangement of Bodawa's method of explaining that the great elder Atisha said. It is also the same with respect to the guru. So not just for assistants, but also the guru. Therefore, except as the defining characteristics of a guru, a minimum of 1/8 of all these defining characteristics set forth here, combining those that are easy to acquire with those that are difficult to acquire. So the point being is that if someone moves your heart in a positive way, and they have enough qualities, you can rely on them and access the Buddha's teachings in this direct way, like personal advice. And if you can connect with the teachings like personal advice, your transformation will be much quicker and much deeper. And if someone is kind of incomplete in qualities, it's healthy for us to have a little bit of distance with them. Because the more you know someone, the closer you are to someone, the more you see their negative qualities, the more you see their unfortunate characteristics, and that can kind of disturb your mind. So it might be best to just see them in teachings when they're teaching the Dharma, and let that be the main relationship, and not turn it into something more personal. There's even a daily training in this that we do, which is, these water bowls that we offer every day. There should be a little grain of rice space between each one, indicate too close to the guru and also not too far away. That's what the space in between the bowls is indicating. So too close is no good, too far away is no good. But what that is like for you as an individual with your own relationship with the guru is something that you have to explore for yourself. But it's interesting. So any questions about the qualities of the guru before we move on to this section about helping others mature? Yeah, you don't need renunciation in order to have a teacher, but you basically need to like the idea of transformation and have enough self-awareness to see at least some of your own faults, right? To be a student who is ready for a teacher, you need to like the idea of transforming the mind. You need to like the idea of development. And then together with that, you need to have enough self-awareness where you can see your own faults, so that if you're in a teaching and someone says, here are the negative aspects of anger, you can see yourself and how you do those things and why they are damaging in response to what has been taught. So the teachings wake up your self-awareness and you're able to resonate in this way. I'm sure that we know people that could go to a teaching on anger and think, oh, isn't it nice that I don't have any anger? Sounds terrible. Those poor people with anger, completely blind and not with any self-awareness. So to be a suitable student, also these, 3 deficiencies of a vessel that we talked about a few semesters ago, basically working on not being an upside down pot who's stubborn and doesn't let anything in that's new, not being a pot full of contamination, so full of your own superstitions, so full of your own opinions that you can't hear new information without it mixing together and getting distorted. And also not being a leaky pot where you can hear things, but they just run out of your ears and you don't remember anything. So that's a project for our whole life. You don't have to be perfect in your, I don't know, not having the deficiencies of a pot. But you need to at least value that teaching enough to try. Yeah, value the idea of it is not useful to be a student who is upside down, who is full of superstition, or is leaking and won't remember anything. It's not a functional way to transform the mind. I'm going to actively work on those faults in myself. You know, really, to be a good student, that's enough, right? And then, you know the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive. Well, yes and no. You don't need the big, giant, capital T teacher right in the beginning. I had this Zen teacher. He was just an English teacher at the local high school, right? He was just a regular guy who went to some teachings in Japan and had a meditation group once a week. And I learned so much from him. Years with this ordinary person with ordinary faults was incredibly enriching. And I wasn't ready for my big teacher. Years with this Zen teacher just gradually woke up more and more self-awareness so that when I met a big teacher, I could sit with them. You know what I mean? So it's not like it's like suddenly you have a teacher, right? It's a gradual process of you have baby teachers and you have facilitators and you have different links to the Dharma gradually. And then that kind of matures you to the point where you can meet one of these big teachers and the connection to be really deep. Does that make sense? I'm not sure where you're getting the importance of renunciation in this context.
Mm-hmm.
Like renunciation is important generally, but it's not like a main thing in seeking a teacher. You need some renunciation that says, suffering is no good, I'd like to end it, but it doesn't have to be a realization of renunciation. These people who were in caves for 12 years waiting to see Maitreya Buddha, like Asanga, when he was waiting to see Maitreya Buddha, he had other teachers. Right? He had many teachers. He had years of instruction. He had a whole, his whole youth was education and study and practice before he ever got to the cave. Yeah? It's a gradual process, right? So, the teacher of your heart, it's really an ability to recognize your own wisdom in a way. Because probably in some sense, we've all met His Holiness's teachings, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in some form, YouTube video, public talk, amazing book. He's a perfectly qualified teacher, but for him to be our root guru requires just some openness and some receptivity on our part for his wisdom to strike a chord with us, for it to have the ring of truth that moves our heart into transformation. So, he's fine, he's sorted, we found a good teacher, done, we've already done it, we found him, right? But for us to feel that, there needs to be some clearing of obstacles from our side, but it doesn't have to be a realization of renunciation. It just needs an idea that suffering has a cause, and that cause can be uprooted. So it's like baby renunciation that's willing to look at your own faults, right? It's baby renunciation, but it's not like this absolute deep conviction with you in every moment. Right? So you need baby teachers, or you need nurses before you get to the doctor, or you need small T teachers before you get to the big T teacher, and that's an essential part of the path. And it might be that your small T teacher becomes a big T teacher as both of you progress, or as your qualities develop, you're able to see more of their qualities. I had a teacher for many years who I didn't really understand how amazing they were right at first. But over time and over observation, I realized how profound this person was. So it took me a while to make this commitment with them. But you know, all of those years of checking him out weren't wasted. I still learned lots from him before I took him into my heart. I still learned a great deal. But now that he's in my heart, I learned so much more from him so much more easily because the barriers are down. Is it making sense? Yes, it's gradual, right? It's gradual. So we kind of now flipping perspectives now when we look at how to help others mature. We're kind of moving from, if we're the student perspective, looking at how to find a teacher, now we're switching to if we're more in the teacher role or in the clinician role or the healer role, how do we mature other people? Yeah, so now we're switching around to now we're in the more teacher role. We're not a guru, we're not a fully qualified teacher by any extent of the imagination. However, we can still help mature others. So this is a section of the 4 ways to gather disciples. And it would sound crazy for any of us to say we're gathering disciples, right? We would sound like we're trying to form a cult. It would sound really creepy. None of us are trying to gather disciples, but we are trying to nurture the people that we're looking after into more health. We're trying to look after the people in our sphere of influence and help them develop, right? In whatever way, secular, spiritual, etc., etc. We're all wanting to nurture people's health, their mental health, their physical health, their spiritual health. So what is the way to create positive influence with people that you do have a connection with? Even if it's not a fully qualified student-teacher relationship, there is that link that's been made where they have chosen you and you have chosen them to be in this dynamic of collaborative transformation. Yeah, so what's the ways to nurture that? So if you look at the bottom of page 53, it says what the 4 ways to gather disciples are. Generosity, as it is earlier explained in the section on this perfection. So the first thing in order to nourish a dynamic with someone is generosity, but that doesn't mean necessarily giving them stuff. Right? Because in the section on generosity that they're referring to, they're talking about offering the Dharma or offering wisdom when it's been asked. They're talking about offering freedom from fear. They're talking about offering loving kindness. And if you can't do any of that, give them a present, right? But that the material generosity is the lower form. So the highest form of generosity is offering what you offer, whether offering psychoanalysis or offering Dharma teachings or offering in whatever way you're offering energy. That offering of energy nourishes the relationship so that you can be a condition for their transformation. So generosity as being kind of the initial link with someone is an interesting place to explore. Yeah. So just kind of sit with it. We'll unpack it a little bit more on Wednesday, but just kind of think about what is the role of generosity, not just in life because generosity and charity are good, not just because I want to create the cause for resources in the future, not just because generosity helps me overcome attachment, but in this specific context with helping others to mature. Helping others to mature, what do I need to be offering from my side in order to wake up their wisdom? So that's the first one. Then the second one is pleasant speech, teaching the perfections to disciples. So it basically means that what you offer is ethical. What you offer has the ring of altruism, that you're not trying to help someone become relaxed and soothed through unethical advice. Does that make sense? You know, because there's ways you can help people relieve their suffering that are not helpful at all, right? You can give people heroin and it will make them very happy and soothed for a short period of time, right? But it's not the kind of soothing and relaxation we want to give people. So this is just really good common sense of pleasant speech doesn't just mean saying what they want to hear or saying things sweetly. This pleasant speech means it has the ring of the perfections. It has the ring of truth of the perfections, of generosity, of ethics, of patience, of joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom. Even if you don't name those, even if you don't put a big signpost and say, now we're talking about ethics, you know, that's not useful or what you're about, but you're transmitting those ideals through your communication. Yeah, transmitting those ideals through however you communicate, even if it's nonverbal communication, just in what you model. Okay, so then working at the aims is number 3. Setting disciples to work on the aims as they have been taught, or involving them in correctly taking up these aims. So basically you're trying to get them off their bum. Yes, you're trying to get the people you're looking after to not just hear the truth that you're offering or to hear the truth of their own wisdom, but to actually do something with that, to put it into some practice. So this is, you know, your skillful means trying to wake up their skillful means. Skillful means being, what do you do with the wisdom you know? You know, this is the question we're always talking about. How do we bring the Dharma into daily life? Or how do we bring Buddhism into an ordinary life? It's basically skillful means of how do I use all of these things that I know in how I live. So in this context, it's about how do you help the patient or how do you help the student take what they understand and bring it through into all the ordinary activities of their day, the ordinary activities of their life. So it's like you're trying to pull through head to heart to action. Yeah, you're trying to wake up their wisdom and connect it with their heart and then pull it into their daily life. And what are the strategies that we can think about to help them do that for themselves in a way that's empowering? Yeah, so this is the condition about motivating others to act from their wisdom place. Okay, so then number 4 is consistency of behavior, is stabilizing yourself in the very aims in which you have established others, and then training in them. So whatever you're helping others with, you need to be doing, right? So if you're trying to help someone sort their marriage drama, you need to be working on your marriage drama, etc., right? So it's about not being a hypocrite. It's about not being inauthentic and basically practicing what you preach, even if it's imperfectly, even if it's not finished. The very work you're encouraging others to do is the work you need to be doing for yourself. So that's pretty common sense, right? That's straightforward that, you know, if you want to help someone achieve better mental health, you need to be working on your mental health. Does that make sense? If you want to help someone be a more spiritual being, you need to be working on being a more spiritual being. Yeah. And I think that you can really feel this with certain teachers or certain therapists or certain, you know, healers of any kind, that if they are actively working on their own transformation, it has a lot more energy when they're helping you to do the same. If they've just kind of taken a certain level of health and just kind of left it at that, like, yeah, good enough. I'm an integrated, healthy, emotionally stable human being and done. If you're thinking of yourself as done, there's less energy in the interaction when you're trying to support someone else's transformation. There's less life, less vitality in the conversation. So this is something really important if we're thinking, how do we mature others or how do we bring out the best in others? We need to be actively bringing out the best in ourselves because it's, you know, it's interdependent, isn't it? Yeah. So that's the 4 means of gathering disciples. So if you want to turn the page, on page 54 at the top is just the verse explaining that in a little bit more detail. It says, generosity is the same as before, teaching the perfections, involving others in taking them up, and involving yourself are asserted to be pleasant speech, working at the aims, and consistency of behavior, respectively. The reason they're stipulated is for. This is an interesting section, and I recommend you read it. But if you want to just jump down to the little quote where it says the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras. Know the ways to gather disciples to be for, the method to give benefit, involving others in, comprehending the teachings, involving them in, engaging, and likewise involving yourself. So it's you know, repeating the same basic ideas. Like at the top of page 55, it says, by the first, they become vessels. By the second, they take interest. By the third, they practice. By the fourth, they train. So these are sequential as well as simultaneous, right? These 4 ways of gathering disciples, or these 4 ways of maturing others. They can kind of go one by one. You know, first you're working at one level, then the next, but also you're trying to eventually work simultaneously. Yeah. So any questions about that or ideas that come from that concept? How do you nurture others? How do you encourage their own maturity? Yeah, I guess if you want to highlight any section, just on the top of page 55, if you want to put a big circle around that quote from the ornament for the Mahayana Sutras, that's the kind of pith or the main point there. Yeah, so there's a difference between practicing and training, which is interesting to explore. Yeah, but yeah, I don't want to overload you with too much content. So we've got a couple minutes if you want to unpack any of those concepts. When you're doing your own work, I guess what's the background strategy? You know, is it just a general philosophy of self-psychology? Is it a general idea that people can transform? You know, what is it that you're bringing to the session or imbuing the session with to kind of bring out the mental health of others and to nourish it? Because of course in the moment we're just spontaneous and we're just operating from what seems organic and functional in the moment. But all of our thoughts that came before the interaction are imbuing the interaction. So it's worth thinking about, what am I filling this space between us with? What am I bringing to this encounter, even if I never say it out loud?
I would like to remind us about the phrase that Richard de Martino phrased in one of the texts that we learned in the first year concerning a Buddhist psychoanalytical perspective on the human condition. And he phrased it, I say it first of all in Hebrew, la'arog ve'lachtor, to long and to strive. And I think that this is the first step. I have to longing for getting out of samsaric suffering, to set on the path, on a spiritual path. I have to feel the longing, and longing is our psychological code name of being devoted to a transformative mode of the mind, which is both ethical and something which is the becoming much more subtler in our mind too. And the second half is to do something about it. You have to strive. Whatever you are doing for this striving is beneficial. Taking refuge in a connection, in a guru devotion connection, is of course something which is much higher position in this longing and striving. Although these are the two part of the equation, the psychic equations that leads you to this commitment to a disciple guru devotion. But if you have this kind of word to la'arog ve'lachtor, you can understand and you can feel it with your personal way. What do you want to put in the longing part, and what do you want to put in the striving part? You don't have to complete the path when you are on it, when you start it. And every morning I start it again.
Yeah. Yep, like that. So before Wednesday, if you can just read the rest of page 55, that's it. Just read the rest of the page, even just, read it right now, as you click off on the session, and just read it slowly and have a think about it. And then we'll talk a little bit more about it on Wednesday, and then move on to the tantric idea about it and continuing on. So if you want to just take a minute and let the thoughts of the day settle and feel some sort of digesting and integrating, as well as what you can pull into the rest of the day from all of this. So just take a minute and sit. Okay, thanks guys. See you soon.